What's up, everybody? I'm Stan, and welcome to Detail Comics, where we go over comics in detail. This is Shelf Appeal, the weekly show on Wednesday where I go over the comic books that I picked up today, give you a little bit of an impression as to what they're all about, and whether there's something you should go to the shop for or not. Make sure to subscribe so that way you get those updates every Wednesday. But to start off with, we're going to talk about Suicide Squad number 26, which is a continuation of the Dark Knight's Metal tie-in. So this sees Harley Quinn and Croc from the Suicide Squad teaming up with Nightwing, Damian, and Green Arrow to make sure that they can make it through Gotham and try and find Batman at the center of this maze, this labyrinth that's been set up by the Batman Who Laughs, as well as a number of Gotham's biggest, baddest villains. So in this one, the art is just fantastic. It's probably one of the best iterations that I've seen, and it really kind of brings out this essence. As far as the writing goes, it's a really cool storyline. We see Harley Quinn kind of take over as the narrator for a portion of it, because it is a Suicide Squad-centered book, and she does a really good job of kind of relaying her inner thoughts. There's a really great moment of clarity that happens while she's driving a school bus, which has to be seen in order to be enjoyed, and then we finally kind of get some progression. We see a little bit of hurtfulness happen as she kind of loses her friend Ivy to this power of the cosmic dark multiverse, but it's definitely something that I would consider very enjoyable, and if you have been reading along with it, it's definitely something I would go grab. Even if it isn't something you've been reading along with, it's still a really fun issue. Next, we're going to talk about the Mighty Thor number 23. So this is, I would say that it's kind of a holdover, or kind of like a placeholder issue as far as the Mighty Thor storyline is concerned. We've got the battle between the Thors, where we see the War Thor and the Mighty Thor kind of going at it. We even have a scene where Jane Foster's holding both Mjolnirs, the ultimate Mjolnir as well as the standard one that she's been bearing for quite some time. But it really comes down to the Odin Son. The Odin Son takes it upon himself to come and kind of talk some sense into Volstagg, who is the War Thor, overcome by rage, and we finally see some bonding between Jane Foster as she reveals herself to be the Mighty Thor, and, Volstagg as he's kind of relinquished the hammer, and they kind of reconcile, which is really great. However, this is just a calm before the storm, so to speak, as we're going to be getting into the War of the Realms pretty hot and heavy when we start up the Death of Mighty Thor arc in Mighty Thor number 700. So it's a little bit confusing jumping from 23 to 700, but that's part of Legacy, and I'm really excited for where that storyline's going to go. It's a really good book right now. Jason Aaron's been doing a great job on it. The art has been great, so it's definitely something that I recommend, and I added it back to my pull list. After that, we're going to talk about Venomverse number 4. So Venomverse number 4 for me is very much a popcorn kind of series. I'm a fan of Venom. I'm a fan of Carnage. These are characters that I grew up with as a kid, so seeing them all kind of cross over and getting all these cool variant versions of Venom is pretty awesome. The Old Man Logan, the X-23, you got a little bit of Manic in there. You've got a little bit of, Black Panther Venom. So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. There's a bit of double cross. There's a bit of little intrigue, a little bit of spy kind of stuff. And I'm waiting to see if we've kind of Trojan horsed our way in there with Carnage, but overall, it's a very enjoyable series for me. Not something I can recommend to everybody, but it's something that I've been having a great time with. Speaking of Venoms, we're going to talk about Gwenom. So this is Spider Gwen number 24, and this is a variant that's a Venomized cover, so to speak. And what we see here is actually the kind of first, the birth of Gwenom. There was a point in time during this storyline, if you've been following along with Predators, you've seen Earth 65's Logan try and hunt down the Spider-Girl, Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen at this point in time, and then there's something that's happened with her, Captain Stacy, her father, who's been in prison, and now he's in a coma, and Matt Murdock's the Kingpin. There's all kinds of craziness going on in that Earth, but what it really comes down to is that in this issue, we actually see the first real introduction of Gwenom to this Earth 65 universe. So, for collectability standpoint, it's pretty key in that respect, but we'll see how far this storyline goes. It's kicking off an arc that's going to deal primarily with Gwenom and her rage that is really kind of allowing the symbiote to take her over. If you're not following along or don't have any interest in the character or think it's all kind of a gimmick, I totally understand that, but I think that it's going to be kind of cool, and I like Robbie Rodriguez's stylized version of the art, so it's something that I'm probably going to pick up as long as the Gwenom story arc continues. Next, I want to talk about Valiant, and that is XL Manowar number 7, and I just love this thing. This is just a great book. It's really cool, seeing the travel and the real growth of Eric from Earth. Sans Exo Manowar armor, but slowly and surely as he kind of progresses through this battle, this war, and there's no real good timetable given for the events of this situation or this series, but slowly he acquires more and more of the armor, becomes more and more accepting of what it can provide him in terms of power, and he slowly grows in power amongst the ranks of the Azure army. And by the time we're done with this, he's essentially devastated multiple different cultures, completely defeated an entire race of aliens, and has slowly kind of dominated this planet and taken up its position as as ruler. So it's really an interesting development, and for somebody that's never been a part of the Valiant universe like myself, it's a great way to get introduced to it because it's just super quick, fast-paced action, lots of beat-em-up kind of stuff, very cool sci-fi storytelling situation. It's not necessarily your normal superhero fare, which is one of the things that I really appreciated about it, and Matt Kindt is writing it really well. I do like the art style, so Exo Manowar, definitely a thumbs up from me. Start at number 1, make it all the way to number 7, you'll enjoy it. Another book that you're going to enjoy is Wonder Woman number 31. So I fell off this story arc after Greg Rucka left it, but I'm really glad I picked it up at James Robinson's introduction with Wonder Woman number 31 because this is the Children of the Gods. So we get Grail at the beginning of this, we get this kind of no-named gentleman that looks like Paul Bunyan, and it turns out he's Hercules. You know, we got Wonder Woman's brother alive and kicking and swinging trees like they're sticks. So I'm really stoked on this. Plus, there's also kind of like a dark side storyline that's going along with it. So Wonder Woman number 31 just became a must-buy kind of book for me, easily going back onto my pull list and something that I'm going to follow along with because if James Robinson is going to write the entirety of Wonder Woman like this, count me in. Then we're going to move on from a book that's just starting off a new story arc to one that's kind of ending, and we're talking about Thanos number 11. So Thanos number 11 is nothing but spectacle. Pretty much it is Thanos and Thane empowered by the Phoenix Force and Thanos newly recuperated after his kind of endeavor as an Avenger inside his own mind and realizing who he is and what he holds for power. They kind of duke it out. You know, they absolutely destroy the planet that they're on. They get, you know, bamped through space, you know, through a wormhole, through and get all spaghettified and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got this really cool storyline, this side story with Trico, the champion of the universe, as well as Nebula. And they've kind of like had a little tryst going on. And they're escaping. They're just escaping the damage and the wanton destruction that's going to happen in the wake of Thanos versus Phoenix-empowered Thane. And it doesn't disappoint. It looks like issue number 12 is where we're going to get the real culmination, and it's going to set the stage for where Donny Cates is going to go in his future installments. So it's a book that I really enjoyed. 11's not for everybody simply because you won't really have a lot of context for what's going on. If you want a lot of spectacle, it's a great show, but you won't really get the storyline. So it's not something I'd recommend, but if you want to pick it up a little while ago, you know, get into it a little bit later on in the storyline, that's perfectly fine. If you really want the full effect, start at number 1 and make your way to number 11. Now that we're done with Thane versus Thanos, we're going to talk about Infamous Iron Man number 12. So this is the conclusion of this series before we pick up in the main Iron Man book. So there's going to be no more dedicated Victor Von Doom Iron Man storylines. And to be perfectly honest with you, I'm a little bit torn on this. This is the choice that everybody made when I included the poll on Monday's video. They want to do a review on this, so I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail. However, the way that this story was told, I found it considerably underwhelming. There was a real gimmicky kind of portion of it that I did not really appreciate at all. It felt really, I'm sure that it was kind of polarizing and everybody's, you know, in the respect to this. I expected more out of this book. I expected a better confrontation. I expected things to be a little bit more direct versus fourth wall breaking. And I mean, it just felt extremely out of place in the book to me, so it's kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. However, I'm going to go into that in more detail in the review that I'm going to do of Infamous Iron Man number 12. So, you know, at some point in time when that's released, there's going to be a card up here that's going to allow you to go to that one directly, but definitely a polarizing book for me. I really wanted to see a little bit better ending for Infamous Iron Man number 12. However, we can move on to the next book, which is Action Comics 988. You know, the lenticular cover, it's, you know, going back and forth there. And what we see in Action Comics 988 is the backstory as to why Jor-el is such a dick. And I can understand why. You know, he makes very bold cases for what happened. You know, while he was, you know, watching his son escape Krypton, and he'd been completely denied all of his scientific endeavors. Not only did he come up with a way for all of the people of Krypton to survive, he couldn't survive, you know, save Krypton itself, but he was denied that at somebody else's behest. You know, basically his wife's father decided that no, we cannot escape, and he deleted everything that he possibly could regarding the information of the arcs that were going to carry all the Kryptonians to safety because space travel was banned. And he was pulled by some unforeseen force. These big blue mystical hands yanked him out of the explosion of Krypton and brought him to basically an area where he was recovered, and then, you know, he was forced to watch all the obscenities and history of terrible things that had happened inside, you know, Earth. It was crazy, man. It was, you know, like this whole forced mind control situation that was thrust upon him by who we can only assume is Dr. Manhattan at this point in time, or whatever outside forces are kind of in this scenario. We have seen some kind of hints of Ozymandias on Doomsday Clock number 2's cover, where you've got Lex Luthor with the Ozymandias gauntlet arm kind of tapped on his hand. And you've got the big blue hands of Dr. Manhattan, which has been confirmed to be in the Doomsday Clock storyline. So I can only assume that they put Jor-el into this situation, but he has been made to believe that everything about Earth is goddamn terrible. And I can understand why he would want to take his son away from this. He would want people to not necessarily... He would want the best for Clark. He'd want the best for Kal-El, and that's not Earth. So that's where we're going to kind of go in the next 2 issues, or 3 issues, I believe, because the Oz Effect is going to go to part 3. So I'm really interested to see how this kind of develops over time, because everything that I've heard about the solicitations going forward is that the big blue man is going to be questioning his whole place here on the planet. And that's going to lead into Doomsday Clock. So Action Comics 98 and 988, definitely something that you're going to have to stick in with. If you haven't read 987, sorry, because I just spoiled a bunch of stuff for you, but 988, dude, you should be reading this. If you're interested in DC Rebirth, Action Comics right now is a must-buy. And then we've got another book that I would consider a must-buy for DC Rebirth, and that is Detective Comics 965. So Detective Comics is telling the story of Tim Drake and his escape from Oz's prison. We have an interview session where we actually get a lot of backstory for Tim Drake, why he is who he is, how he became a Robin, or at least in this current continuity, how he became a Robin. And then we have some very serious endeavors that happen as part of this. He is the most dangerous and most brilliant teenager that's in the DC realm, so he does some pretty amazing stuff that allows him to kind of escape his confinements. And who does he find? He finds Batman! But it's not the Batman you think. And I don't want to spoil that for you. Detective Comics 965 is a must-read right now, even if you haven't been on the book from the beginning. Like, if you barely made it into Detective Comics, you haven't really found it as any kind of interest, right now is the time to be reading Detective. Even if it's only for the next 3 or 4 issues while we go through the storyline, Detective Comics, you got to buy it to complement the Action Comics run right now. Big dealings with Oz, big things about Rebirth, all on the horizon. Another big event going on right now is Dark Knight's Metal, and we already tied in with Suicide Squad number 26, but the big book for this week, Batman the Murder Machine number 1. So this is a tale of Batman taking over the powers of Cyborg and using them, well, not the best way. So this is actually a really interesting storyline where we see a really heartbreaking tale with the loss of Alfred. And I want to go into this in a lot more detail, but what you can see is you can see an emotional journey, a dependence, a codependence, like this situation where Batman realizes exactly how much he lost if Alfred was ever to go away from him, if he ever lost his father figure. For all intents and purposes, his father, because he was raised without his for quite some time. And he's got such a reliance that he goes to the extra mile to create an artificial intelligence. And what happens when that artificial intelligence acts as Alfred would and just wants to protect their son? So it's a really interesting story. It's a really interesting take. It's a real heartbreaking message that this had to come out of the dark universe, the Earth -44, and tell this story that seems extremely plausible in a certain scenario. If something like this happened, how bad could it get before Bruce does something the exact same? It's really interesting. Definitely something I'm going to recommend. Again, I'm going to be doing a full review on Batman the Murder Machine. That's going to be a card up there, so definitely check that one out. I'm going to go into it in a lot more detail for you guys. Another great one-shot that's dealing with character development has to be Generations Captain America number 1. There's only going to be one because it is a one-shot. However, we do see what happens to Sam Wilson through the Vanishing Point. And this is unlike a lot of other characters. A lot of other characters go for, a day, a few hours. They get to know their counterparts, their canonical other versions. And in this one, it's really different, because we see that not only was the inspiration for Sam Wilson Captain America, but how Sam Wilson sent back in time became the inspiration for Captain America. So it's a duality. It's the person that does the right thing in the face of adversity, whether it is Captain America standing up against the Nazis and leading the Allies to victory, or if it's Sam Wilson sent back in time taking his inspiration from Captain America and standing up for what he believes is right in terms of civil rights, or leading a smaller group of people, becoming a pastor, taking care of his community. So Captain America insinuates that he gets his inspiration from the actions of his friend, of his friend Paul Jenkins or whatever, Sam Wilson takes his name for. And he uses that as an inspiration to give the shield to Sam. So it's like Sam inspiring Captain America, who has inspired Sam. It's this big kind of infinite loop between the Captain Americas, between Sam. But what it does is it finally gives Sam Wilson peace. He doesn't need to worry about living up to the standards of Captain America, because living the life that he did inspired Captain America, Steve Rogers, to be who he is today. So it gives him a sense of validation that regardless of what he does, he is proud of his legacy. He is proud of what he is as a person, and he no longer needs to feel like he needs to live up to the mantle of Captain America, because right now, Captain America needs to live up to the mantle of Captain America more than ever. Steve Rogers needs to redeem that mantle. He needs to earn that trust back for the American people. And Sam Wilson has found that regardless of the situation, he doesn't need to be Captain America in order to feel important. He can be important in his own life, in his own way. And that's why he's going back to the mantle of the Falcon. So this could really be Secret Empire Omega Part 2, so to speak, but it gives you that natural transition of why Sam Wilson would give up the mantle of Captain America, give the shield back to Steve Rogers, and take Falcon back up as his namesake, because he can do just as much good as the Falcon as he could as Captain America. It's just that he wouldn't have the symbol. Instead, he can turn the Falcon into a symbol on its own. So I really like the way that story played out. Definitely something that I recommend for people if they want to get a little bit of conclusion and if they want to get a really good journey for Sam Wilson as a character. And as we finish up with Captain America, we have another book with his big visage on the front, and that is Marvel Legacy #1. And even though Captain America doesn't play a huge role in this book, it's really inspired by a lot of the events that have taken place that have really surrounded the Captain America character. But Marvel Legacy is about more than that. And I mean, there's so much stuff going on in this book. Like, I can't even convey how much happens in Marvel Legacy. In the video that's runtime, the runtime of the video so far still can't cover everything that went on in Marvel Legacy. But what I can say is that, Jason Aaron did a great job providing so many points for people to kind of latch onto and create great stories from. And that's really the most important thing about this. If you're looking at this in a parallel, and the comparison between DC Universe Rebirth and Marvel Legacy #1, they're going to happen for ages. They happen too close together, they're doing too similar things to really not make those dedicated comparisons. You've already got the spoilers that have kind of come out of it, but what it comes down to is that we're going to see a unified direction. At least that is what I get out of it. There are places that people need to go, there are directions that characters need to travel, and there's going to be various leaps that are going to happen that are going to bring us back to not necessarily a different time in Marvel. They're going to bring back individual characters, of course. We already see all that kind of stuff, and we know that the writing's on the wall for various characters coming back. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a situation where we're going to change the focus as to how stories are written. It's not necessarily going to be from sensationalism to sensationalism to sensationalism. Hopefully, what this means is that we're going to start with an idea and we're going to carry it through to fruition. We're going to create really strong story arcs based around characters and their developments over time. There's like some really cool, like single frame, single panel kind of justifications or insinuations that could have entire implications. They could be universe changing. And it's just a single panel or 4 panels or something along those lines. People, fans of the Black Panther, you know what I'm talking about. If you're looking in detail and you see Norman Osborn trying to get into the Sanctum Sanctorum, you understand that man is, he's thirsty. He's hungry for his power. He wants to get back to who he was. And that is a story unto itself. There's no real insinuations of Peter Parker as Spider-Man, or there's no other really big developments. There's small little nods to things. Of course, you've got those characters that are coming back, and they're going to play a really prominent role, but it's the little things. It's the bones. It's the structure that they set up behind Marvel Legacy that's really the important thing. And now it's like, okay, we've got a really great kickoff. We've got a really good field position on this one. How can we carry the ball across the line? What kind of plays do we need to run? How do we put together a drive deep into the fourth quarter where we need to score that winning touchdown, get those last points, keep it from overtime and take the game home, win one for the Gipper kind of thing. Like, this is sports analogies galore. Marvel's in a situation where they need to make this happen, and we've got all the tools that we need right in Marvel Legacy #1. Is it a wower? No. I wouldn't say that's a wower. I'd say that the art is great. I'd say it's pretty fantastic. There's a lot of really talented artists. I'd say that the structure behind it, the narrator, that's a pretty cool twist. Definitely something that I'm really excited about because one of my favorite runs in comic books is Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four. So bringing back those characters and providing, making them kind of a keystone point, it just seems to be natural. But it's more about which players are going to step up, which artists, which writers, which creative teams are going to take this kind of world and make it great again. That is the most important thing for me. And I think that Marvel Legacy shows a lot of promise, and I'm going to get into it in a lot more detail. I can't even do a review on it because it would take me a half an hour. So I think I'm going to break it down into different videos. So I'm going to break down the main points, the main sections, the main throughput storylines that are in Marvel Legacy, and then also the individual kind of pieces and kind of do snippets and things like that. I can see easily 3 or 4 videos that come out of Marvel Legacy #1. But those are the books that I picked up this week, and I really want to know what you guys think about them too. So hit me up in the comments down below, and we can start having those conversations. As always, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything inside the world of comics.